galaxy hadn't seen engineers like those on Earth. Sure, every civilization out there had builders, creators, and dreamers. But humans. They were something different. They had this knack for bending the rules and uncanny ability to make something out of nothing. For them, engineering wasn't just about following blueprints. It was about thinking on their feet, and most of all, never giving up. This was exactly what the Xylith Dominion failed to realize when they decided to subjugate Earth. They underestimated the power of a people who could rig an engine with duct tape, jerry-rig power lines to run a city block, and reroute wastewater systems in a pinch. And because they didn't understand it, they failed to see the warning signs. Earth's engineers weren't just problem solvers. They were improvisers. Day 1, the Xylith assault begins. Earth fell faster than anyone expected. The Xylith Dominion, a race with ships the size of cities and technology centuries ahead of humanity, unleashed their forces without warning. Military bases were wiped off the map within hours. Major cities fell one by one, surrounded by invisible shields that turned Earth's most powerful weapons into harmless sparks. In a cold, dimly lit engineering hangar on the outskirts of what used to be Chicago, a group of men gathered around a massive, holographic map. The leader among them was Wes, a tall, lanky man that operated at 1,000,000 miles per hour and hands that could build or dismantle anything he could imagine. To his left was Noah, a systems analyst, always the first to find the weak point in any system. Then there was Marcus, their resident electrician and mechanic, with an uncanny intuition for machines. And finally, Owen, their explosives expert, a man who could rig a toaster to explode if given enough motivation. Was pointed to the map. The Xylith have set up power domes around every major city. They're harvesting energy, feeding it into those shield generators. We've got 2 options: wait until they drain us dry, or cut them off. Sounds like a suicide mission either way, Marcus muttered, rubbing the back of his neck. Not if we improvise, Wes replied, grinning. He tapped a blinking spot on the map, a relay station outside of Milwaukee. That's where they're routing power. We need to rig up a bypass, and then we detonate the whole damn relay. If we pull it off, their entire grid goes dark for a few minutes. The others exchanged glances. There were no illusions here. What Wes was proposing was madness. But madness was all they had left. Day 4. The Milwaukee sabotage. Under the cover of night, they approached the ex-Xylith relay station. The alien tech was a sprawling web of metal spires and conduits, pulsating with energy. Noah had studied its schematics through the stolen Xylith files. He knew where each line fed, where each output port was located. But standing in front of it, seeing it glow with a power far beyond Earth's capabilities, even he felt a twinge of doubt. Marcus looked over the setup, his eyes scanning the cables running from the generator to the domes. This stuff makes 0 sense. It's like it's alive. Then let's make it stop breathing, Wes said. They worked quickly, hacking through conduits and wiring together scrap metal pieces to bypass the relay nodes. The Xylith used power systems that oscillated in ways that human tools couldn't measure, so the team had to improvise. Noah and Marcus rigged the lines to redirect the energy into an overload cycle. When they finally set the charges, it looked like nothing more than a mess of scrap and wiring. But they all knew it'd work. Owen leaned against a concrete pillar, a detonator in hand, waiting for the signal. "Last call, gentlemen," he said. "Let's hope our alien friends appreciate fireworks." In a brilliant flash, the relay station exploded, sending an electromagnetic pulse that rippled through the Xylith grid. For precisely 10 minutes, the power domes around Earth's cities flickered, and humanity took its first breath of freedom since the invasion began. Week 3. The Engineers' War. As the days passed, the engineers turned the Xylith's own technology against them. They learned to disrupt the enemy's scanning systems, blocking the signals that kept the shield domes active. They dismantled Xylith transport ships, finding ways to modify the anti-gravity engines and use them to lift entire skyscrapers. The Xylith attempted to retaliate. They deployed drones, sleek black machines that scanned the Earth for human activity. The engineers answered with ingenuity. Wes and his team set up decoys made from old water heaters, sticking them along the highways and backroads. When the drones approached, they exploded, filling the sky with clouds of interference that scrambled the Xylith's sensors. One night, as they gathered around their makeshift base, a small storage facility outside the city limits, they heard a crackling over the radio. It was from another group of engineers across the country, Portland, they said. They'd figured out how to manipulate the alien biocomposites, converting the material into a polymer that blocked Xylith weaponry. Hearing this, Wes's face lit up. So we can make armor out of it. More than that, Noah added, eyes wide with excitement. If we can get our hands on enough of their tech, we could create entire safe zones, shielded from their weaponry. Imagine it, Marcus whispered. Fortresses built from alien metal. The team knew it would take weeks of scavenging, but the possibilities were endless. They were finally beginning to understand Xylith tech, and more importantly, how to twist it to serve humanity's needs. Month 2, the final push. After 2 months, the Xylith's control was slipping. They'd lost resources, equipment, and worst of all, the ability to predict what the humans would do next. Wes and his team had created a series of fortified zones around key relay points, and each of these zones acted as a base for other engineers who joined the resistance. By this time, hundreds of engineers were involved, each one with a different area of expertise: plumbers who rerouted sewage lines to flood Xylith bases, construction workers who rigged cranes to drop heavy steel beams onto patrols, and programmers who hacked into Xylith data streams, filling their systems with endless, unsolvable loops. The Xylith commanders, overseeing from a mothership in orbit, were desperate. They issued orders to purge entire regions, using thermal weapons that scorched the ground. But for every engineer they killed, 3 more rose to take his place. And the ones that survived, they only got better. Wes and his team led one final mission to the Xylith Control Center in Houston, a sprawling complex with shielded walls 3 miles thick. The engineers worked in unison, hacking into systems and bypassing security protocols. They planted explosive charges deep within the facility's infrastructure. At the center of the complex, they discovered the Xylith commander herself, a towering figure clad in biometal armor. She snarled at them as they approached, her voice reverberating with anger and disbelief. "You insignificant creatures," she spat. "You think your feeble technology can withstand us?" Wes stepped forward, meeting her gaze with calm defiance. "It's not the technology that beats you. It's the humans who use it." He raised his hand, signaling to Owen, who stood by with the detonator. As the charges went off, they felt the ground shudder beneath them. The Xylith commander roared, lurching forward as the walls began to crumble. "Fall back," was shouted, grabbing Noah and pulling him through the collapsing corridors. Owen and Marcus were right behind them, sprinting through the debris, racing against the destruction. As they emerged from the collapsing building, they could see it from a distance: the Xylith Control Center, once an indomitable fortress, now falling into ruins. The day after victory. The resistance didn't stop after Houston. Across the planet, other engineers followed suit, targeting Xylith bases, disrupting power grids, and dismantling every piece of infrastructure the Xylith had built. Without their control centers, the Xylith forces were crippled, unable to maintain their grip on Earth. A week later, the skies above Earth were empty. The Xylith Dominion had retreated, their invasion turned to dust by the very species they had thought beneath them. Wes, Noah, Marcus, and Owen stood together, staring at the rubble of the final Xylith base they destroyed. Their bodies were battered, their faces smeared with grime and blood, but they were alive, and they had won. Noah broke the silence. "Think they'll be back?" Wes shrugged. "If they're smart, they won't." Owen laughed, a sound that echoed in the silence. They came all this way, and all they found was a planet full of stubborn idiots with a love for duct tape and bad ideas. Wes grinned. The galaxy's finest improvisers. They knew the world would take years to rebuild, but as they stood together, they also knew something else: that Earth's engineers had proven themselves as humanity's greatest defenders. And should the Xylith or any other invaders ever return, they would find a planet armed not just with weapons, but with minds that could twist, bend, and reshape any challenge thrown at them.